McKenna, Senior Manager, International Engineering at Zynga, with us today. You're a member of the advisory board at Worldware Conference and also a frequent speaker at Unicode conferences. At Zynga, Mike leads a team of internationalization and localization engineers in a fast-paced, constantly changing environment. Then also with us today we have Leandro Rees, Senior Globalization Program Manager at Adobe Systems. He thought I came on board last second, really appreciate it. Leandro is a very experienced and motivated globalization professional with over 2 decades of experience as a localization engineer, program manager, and evangelist. Leandro is responsible for driving a world readiness program at Adobe with the goal to elevate the level of internationalization of all Adobe products. Now, also with us, Adam Asnes. He's the founder and CEO at Lingoport, and we also have Olivier Ligougon, globalization lead at Lingoport, with us. Myself, my name is Chris Ralph. I'm the marketing director at Lingoport. And now, with further ado, I will hand it over. Actually, no, we're going to do a poll, I think, right away. Let's see how many of you actually do have a development experience. If you don't mind providing us with the answer here, I'll share the result in just a little bit. Probably leave the poll open for another 30 seconds. The trends, but 35% yes, 35% no, 30% yes, but it's been a while. And why don't we give it another 5 seconds? But 75% of you already voted. And I will close the poll right now and then share the results. So it looks about 42% do have a
poll that kind of helps us with who's here and the like. It's a bit similar to the makeup this morning, and can appreciate that. There'll be something here for everyone depending upon the depth of their programming here. The agenda is going to be that we're going to give a little background, a little bit of business case, then we're going to go and move through some basic concepts, some basic understanding of Globalizer, because that sets the stage, and then dive into the scorecard in depth. We're going to do show the scorecard a little differently than we did this morning. We had a great presentation this morning with lots of questions, and so I want to remind this group that in the GoToMeeting interface on the right, there is a question section. You can fill that out and ask that, and we'll look to address questions together, including the panel, at the end of the webinar. We'll leave about 15 minutes or more for questions. All right. So a little background here on the Scorecard initiative is that this winter we were, Olivier and I were visiting with some customers, and the subject of dashboards came up. I don't think they necessarily called it a scorecard at that point, but just the idea of a management view of understanding globalization readiness. And so we started talking internally. And then in March, we were at the Worldware Conference, and there, standing up in front, was a whole presentation given by Mike McKenna, who at the time was with Yahoo. He's now at Zynga now. And then Leandro was speaking for Adobe, and Paul Henry was in for Autodesk. all the way in from Switzerland, but they were all presenting a scorecard system they had created within the globalization departments of their respective companies, and in a bit of cooperation with one another that addressed many of the things from a architectural or global focus view that they needed to support in their organizations. And so we were just really excited about that and worked with them a little bit in cooperation, got their input on our scorecard as well. But asked them to join us here today, and that's great that they can be here. Mike, I asked this question in the morning, and same for you, Leandro, but I think it's worth revisiting. What was the impact of having, or maybe the origin and impact of having scorecards being developed at your respective organizations?
Well, origin's a little bit different question than we asked in the morning, but
right.
Us on the team that I was on then, it was a matter of scalability. We had over 4 to 5, close to 500 point products at Yahoo. And
Mike, it's a bit hard to hear you if you could.
Yeah, is that a little bit better?
Only a little.
Okay, let's see. I can adjust better here.
We have some background noise going on.
Okay. Anyway, we had about 400 to 500 point products at Yahoo and about 6 or 7 globalization architects to be able to help them get their job done. And so for us, it was a matter of scalability to be able to get globalization into all of our products in a consistent manner that helped our architects work with the teams and let the teams get most of the work done themselves and be able to move forward so that and not leave anything left dangling or
Mike, we lost you.
Lost me. So I'm still here?
Yeah, now you're back and louder, I might add.
Okay. Anyway, so the main point was the scalability to allow us to get the globalization into all of the point products across Yahoo at the time. And then here at Zynga, we're taking a look at the concept of scorecards to help with acquisitions as we gain new companies and work with new products that get built. Super.
Okay. Maybe, Leandro, if you would answer if you have anything to add to the origin question, that's great. And maybe we'll have you add the effect.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to say that the origins or the motivation system, report card system, is basically the same as what Mike had at Yahoo. It was a matter of scalability. The impact has been extremely positive. Through this report card, at Adobe we call it the Globalization Report Card, or GRC for short. This tool has enabled us to assess a very large number of products that we could not do by ourselves before. With this tool, we can basically ask the product teams themselves to complete a self-assessment. I should add that the tool that we created is available on our intranet. It's based on our own Flex technology, so it's really easy to use. It's visually appealing. It's really a very simple process. So because of this, we have been able to spread the word or evangelize the benefits of internationalization across Adobe. And Adobe is constantly evolving, acquiring new companies which bring in new products and new people that often do not know enough about internationalization. There's many seed projects always happening and new products coming out of those. So with the Globalization Report Card tool, we are now able to handle all these new scenarios and the high volume of people and products that need to be assessed and need to understand internationalization. So to summarize, it's been extremely beneficial for us to put this in place.
Okay, great. Thank you. Very helpful. Gives us some context here. I do need to mention a little bit about Lingoport, why we get these webinars. We're 10 years old now, actually as of last March. We didn't do any fanfare about that, but we started right before the whole market crash in 2001. So our timing was unusually bad. But we survived that, and we're here today still. And Lingoport provides a whole bunch of internationalization services, ranging from, sort of getting a handle on what's ahead and building a very detailed project plan, cost analysis, task analysis, to actually performing the development. And Lingoport's engaged in some very large internationalization implementations, as well as small and medium-sized ones. But we just recently gave a presentation on a very large one we did with Cisco. Lots of testing and integration of localization into the process. So but the difference here is we don't really get very involved in the localization, and there's lots of localization service companies out there that's what they do, and they have maybe one i18n consultant available. And then actually, for a lot of localization companies, actually hire us to do the internationalization effort. But this is our prime business, is internationalization. And we developed Globalizer originally to support internationalization services, but we had a very early eye on that right from the product inception to make Globalizer independently valuable. So a lot of Globalizer customers, I'd actually say the majority, don't necessarily engage with us for large service efforts. They're using Globalizer on their own. There are everything from globalization service organizations within companies like at Yahoo to individual developers at software companies that are tasked with, they've had internationalization kind of laid in their laps and they're fighting through it. So somebody asked if you have to be a service customer to use Globalizer, and the answer to that is no. That was from this morning. That the two are independent, but leveraged very much in the delivery of both, and it depends on the customer needs. All right, let's get down to some basic terminology and move ahead quickly. First of all, in this presentation, we focus on internationalization, and to be clear, that's the software engineering side of enabling that code base to support localization. So enabling lots of different locale requirements, which include language, date, time, all kinds of programmatic logic and manipulation, figure things like phone number format, sorting. All of that is on the internationalization side. And again, that's where we're focused today. That's what Lingoport focuses. So everything on the left side of that blue graphic. I want to emphasize that because the two terms tend to be confused left and right. I don't pretend to be trying to correct everyone, but it is very clear in all my business dealings over the last 10 years since starting the company that if you say internationalization or localization, they tend to blur between the lines for different people. And then some people even call it software translation, so you just kind of throw up your hands. And internationalization is that it's always focused on some business requirement. Developers don't tend to internationalize because they're thinking ahead of some neat little user requirement. It's usually really a business focus. So it comes from a new contract, or maybe you're a global company, as Leandro said. Adobe is a global company, Yahoo is a global company, Zynga is new properties, and they need to invoke internationalization requirements on those new properties. Or we have plenty of customers who have been global with, let's say, a U.S. English product that now they really see they will be greatly enhanced in their sales position and their competitive position if they finally internationalize and localize and bring that back in. So there's often big strategic workings at play. There might be a sales contract and the like. And that's because internationalization just runs across an application. It's not a trivial thing to enable in an existing software product. If you're internationalizing as you go, it's obviously much more straightforward. But even then, you kind of are helped by a systematic approach, and there's little systematic, there's very little systematically in the marketplace that can help you support that. Development teams are moving faster than ever right now. You have a moving away from larger monolithic waterfall releases to agile releases. And there's lots to lose in terms of time, revenue, costs, and product acceptance. If internationalization is, say, 3 months late, which is a very conservative estimate, often it's like a year late, it costs a lot in revenue. It costs a lot in delayed recognition that the CFO is going to be, kind of keyed up on. So with that, I was sitting down the other day, and nationalization kind of have to interact and perceive the problem. And it's worth talking about this because I think I could give a whole webinar on this particular subject, and I should probably write a whole column for Multilingual on this. But developers, and this is very much a stereotype, and if I offend anybody, sorry, but this is a stereotype that's based in a lot of truth that we see. Most developers view internationalization as straightforward, simple, and even handled when it may not be handled. Okay, so they'll say, oh, I externalized the strings for this section, so it's handled, right? But they haven't considered all the issues that surround locale, and string externalization is kind of the most easy one to do, but it clearly doesn't handle the problem. But in any case, they'll view internationalization as, at best, a Tier 3 bug. By that I mean a Tier 1 bug would be it crashes the application. Tier 2 bug was some functionality that's promised doesn't actually work. And Tier 3 is less important. It's presentation oriented. Features come first for developers. They don't have enough time, and this is human nature. They are really tasked with a lot. Typically, they're understaffed. We know a lot of developers that work some very, very long hours. So this is not a knock against developers. It's just the reality. They have, let's say, 3 weeks to get through to pick a number, to get through a release. They have to get it on time, and they're looking to limit feature and requirement creep, not enhance it. Localization managers, they are really the stakeholders for internationalization. They have internationalization issues that come up with every release. For them, a lot of internationalization issues are Tier 1, 2, and 3 bugs. So if, let's say, an application is now having to work with Unicode data, it crashes. To them, that's a Tier 1 bug, or a Tier 2 bug in that someone wants to put Unicode data in, or even ISO Latin 1 accented characters in, and somewhere it gets hung up and it no longer works, so that feature is no longer working. That's now a Tier 2 bug for them. And Tier 3 might be, oh, there's an embedded English string. It's still important to them. So we see a different weighting. And then for developers, they're throwing that at localization managers to hand. So they're not, the localization managers aren't necessarily getting enough support from development. And often the localization managers lack a deep understanding of the code base, or any programmatic understanding for that matter. We see a lot of localization managers who kind of came up the project management ladder or the linguistic ladder and never really had anything but beyond cursory training in programming. So that's just where it sits for them, and you can see the problem there. Then on the underlying all of that is a business manager who expects a contract to be fulfilled, or a sales office in Germany to be supported, I'll give you an example. We were just talking with a customer last week who was upset that one of the reasons for looking at Globalizer is they had released in Germany and everything worked except the it was a very financially oriented product, and they had not flipped the comma and the period for the decimal denomination. So for the developers, that was not really a problem, something they were unaware of. But for the country manager, that was a big deal because now they've gone all through this effort of providing the software in German, and it doesn't provide something basic like the interplay of the comma and the period for that market. That shows a poor confidence, a poor adaptation. So it's a limiter when that's the focus of their data. So they ran Globalizer to see if it would have found before and after those issues, and it clearly did. It found that for them. They're interested in time to market, over budget and late. Those are very expensive times to be finding issues after they've gone through testing. So again, the three intersperse, and you see a little screenshot of the scorecard. We're looking to bridge the gap between those issues. Now, again, traditionally the approach is you test a lot. So maybe if you're thinking about this, you run a bunch of greps, you write these scripts that look for stuff in your code, but it's a really difficult thing to look for, so you kind of overwhelm yourself. So you start viewing your pages, you pseudo-localize. There's nothing wrong with pseudo-localization, but I don't think it's the best way to test because now you're sort of in this iterative loop, and it's hard to hit all the points in your application, so it's easy to miss stuff. Static analysis, and it's important to get this right because it sets up the scorecard. Static analysis is where you point analysis at the actual source code. You don't have to run it to test in a test environment to see what's going to happen. This is a common term that we see in programmatic development now. You might run static analysis for looking at application security or application stability, identifying bugs. Well, for internationalization, it's the same thing. You can run right on your source code rather than in a test suite to find things. And that's really good because you want to find and isolate and locate those issues early on. And what you see is the various parts of Globalizer. In the center, you have the server interface where you customize and configure so that you isolate exactly the issues on a repeatable basis. On the left, you see a desktop client. That's what runs on your source code. That keeps all your source code on your local machine, but it drives the developer right through to each issue. You see highlighted issues that they can see right in their source code view. And then on the right is a command line view. We'll spend most time talking about command line output in this webinar. And that's because the command line can run in an automated fashion, running against your source code on something like a nice nightly build via continuous integration. And that nightly build spits out data that we're tracking now in the globalization scorecard and comparing with. Now, it's important to note that when you take on static analysis, whether it's for i18n or whatever you may see, and I should mention that I'm using i18n as an abbreviation for internationalization. I forget to do it. It stands for I-18 letters in the middle, M at the end. So the advantage of static analysis is, again, you're analyzing at the source level instead of having to test every part of your application. And that helps you quantify the issues right up front throughout the application instead of just by module. And it identifies the exact location of those issues in your source code right up front and helps you through the fixes quickly. We would be the first to tell you that you need to take time to configure for static analysis to work. We give you a lot of good default head starts in Globalizer, so you're not starting from nothing. But you have to have a process in place, and that includes putting that raw code through Globalizer and looking at the reports and then using filtering, tagging, and a database within Globalizer to keep track of all that and filter that down to a good quality customized report. If you don't do that, you're going to sort of lose the alliance of the developers, because they'll look at the reports and say, well, there's good data in here, but I have to filter through all these false positives to get at the meat of what I want. So it's important that within Globalizer, there's all these utilities to filter that down. And you can certainly do that in Globalizer. You can hire us to do it as well for you, but all the tools are there and all the abilities are there and help to do that yourself. But it's important you tune that right, especially for something as powerful as the scorecard. So again, the Globalizer usage model, readiness of your code. You can assess, you can detect on an ongoing basis, and validate that you're ready for internationalization. All right, we're going to just, for continuity, show you the Globalizer interface. This is hardly really a demo because we want to get to the scorecard. And so there's way more functionality than we're going to show. But this is just for context. I'll let Olivier take it.
Hi, this is what would have to handle in order to see scan results, meaning scanning the code. The code is something that lays on the developer's disk, and what you want to do is point Globalizer at that code and scan with different languages in mind. So here we have three different kinds: one for C++, one for Java, and one for SQL, and they give different types of results. I'm not going to go over everything that the tool can do because it's very extensive. I just want to give you a sense for finding an issue here. For example, we'll be running a scan, and here if I double click on that line, I will see in the source file right here, it says display the address. This is a tiny address book. You notice that this is directly in the code. It's something that says as a tooltip here. In other words, it can only be done in English. The same with the name here. So there is no resource bundle. There is no string externalization that's being done. That's for the embedded string results and the different categories here. One thing I want to emphasize for this particular demo here is I can generate a report from this particular button here. And to generate a report, I'm going to give it the type of report that I want. So you notice Excel, CSV, XML, HTML, plain text. I'm going to choose just one of them here. I'm going to choose this guy here, an aggregate detailed report. I'm going to ask it to generate into a report directory here. It's going to be called the i18n demo aggregate report. I'm generating it. I'm going to the reports document here, and you'll just see what happens in terms of generating reports. I'm going to give you the summary page here. You see that for C++, there were a number of lines that were scanned, a number of files that were scanned, and then you get a summary for the embedded strings issues that were detected. The locale sensitive message, the general patterns. And in the reports, you can then dive down. For example, locale sensitive message for C++, the file that was found, the line number, issue, line. So things that developers, how am I going to solve it? Is it something that I want to deal with? Is it something I need to recode? And there is a lot of help that Globalizer provides in order. I wanted to show you that before we dive into the actual report card, which is based on running those reports from the command line. But before we do that, I think we have a new poll here. Chris?
Okay, can you go to the next slide, please?
Do you see that?
No.
Go back up. All right, so the poll that we're asking is, do you have a development process for ensuring i18n requirements? Yes or no?
All right, let me start the poll here.
All right, we'll go quickly. Let me add that, you know, for a real Globalizer demo, go to lingoport.com and you'll see there's video, there's kind of like a 3-minute version and a 10-minute version. Obviously, the 10-minute version shows a lot more. And you can sign up for demo copy. How's the poll going?
Okay, we'll leave and
Okay.
post it in 5 seconds. So if you still like to vote, please do so now. And I will be closing the poll right now and then displaying the result here. So 58 yes, 42 no.
Okay. I will say that trying to put paper in the printer. I would say that it looks like more people actually have a process than we had this morning. The interesting thing is that people that tend to attend these seminars tend to be more localization experience, and so I think we get an interesting skew of more experience and more educated localization teams than we would necessarily, and internationalization teams with the general public. Usually, boy, the answer is, nah, we just kind of hack at it. So bravo for everybody here. All right, so now it's time to talk about the scorecard. I'll let's get the show and tell going on the scorecard here.
Okay, this is Olivier again. What I'm going to show you is first a preview of the scorecard as a result that is being presented over, in that instance, an HTML page here. What you have is on the right-hand side, you have a graph. That graph shows Globalizer scans coming from data from Globalizer. In other words, going at the code, the actual code that the developers have for a particular set of products. Here we have a C++ scan. Part of the code is in C++, part of the code is in Java, and there are some SQL statements that go against the database here. And you'll notice that there are the categories we showed very briefly in Globalizer are shown here in the vertical axis: embedded strings, locale-sensitive methods, static references, general patterns, and those are repeated for C++, Java, and SQL. The blue bars show thresholds, and the red bars show the actual data that you have. And you'll notice right away there's a big spike here in terms of the Java side, where embedded strings have been found much higher than the expected threshold. So you know that there is a big problem here on the Java side, and the internationalized, either in terms of embedded strings, but even locale-sensitive methods are really very high there. So that's coming from Globalizer. And then on the left-hand side, you notice i18n infrastructure, locale framework. Those items there, they are coming from the scorecard from what I'm going to name an i18n analyst, somebody who oversees projects from an i18n perspective, from internationalization perspective, with specific requirements. For this demo here, we have listed about 10 different requirements going from i18n infrastructure to online help. Under each one of those are specific criteria that, in order to get a 1, in other words, in order to say I'm complete with that particular requirement, there are a set of requirements that themselves need to be fulfilled. I want to show very briefly in terms of the layout on disk what it looks like. What we have here is we have a scorecard directory under 3.5. It's not available in 3.5. It's going to be in 3.6, but it's going to show a bin with the number of things to run here, a published directory by default, which is where the HTML file resides for publishing the results. And then I'm going to open the Lingoport scorecard here, which is an Excel file. I'm just going to double-click this guy, and you're going to notice the very similarity between the HTML and this Excel file here, because the HTML actually comes from this Excel. I'm going to open this guy here, and in terms of the Globalizer data, there are some data that's coming from Globalizer. I'm going to click here very briefly on one of the tabs. This is data coming from Globalizer being generated from a command line. And then there are data that are being filled by an analyst. Here I have an environment for i18n. Do I have, so this is very technical, right? Do I have even source control access? Can I run and build things? Do I have automated tests? Do I have manual tests? From everything from an i18n framework. Do I have a negotiation logic? Do I have tracking logic? Do I have POJO, for example? Do I have persistence? Does it track countries, languages, locale, time zones? What am I really doing here? I'm going to go over one of those guys here and just drive through what I have in terms of the specific items on that particular page here. That particular one is for Unicode support, and you'll notice those are the criteria that I may decide to include in terms of my grading of this guy. 0.9 here is the overall grade, but how did I come about with that one? You'll notice here that there is something that the i18n analyst is going to set at the beginning of the project. It's the project setting, and it's 1, meaning I need to have that persistence in there. That persistence, if it's implemented here, you'll notice that it changes to green. If it's not implemented or tested, you'll have something red, meaning it's not done. Here I have those 5 items that need to be done for the Unicode implementation for this particular project, and there are the ones that are giving me the grades that are then filled here. How does that report to the scorecard? If you go back to the scorecard here, you'll notice the Unicode implementation is 0.9. Well, that is a direct tie to that analyst view of the world, and pretty much as weeks go by, those elements are going to move forward, and you're going to have hopefully Unicode support done, let's say, next week, and that grade will turn just like the locale framework, which is totally done in that instance, and it will be another green notch under the belt for that analyst. However, there is an easy identification of things that need to happen here, like data type or character typing in or multilingual support. What happened there? Do we not have resource handling or something? So this is really the analyst view of the world here. If I'm going at what Globalizer brings to the table in terms of hard data now, data that comes directly from the scanning, let's say from a nightly build, I'm going to look at what Globalizer results in terms of an Excel, and I'm going to import this guy here. So what I have is a lot of data. What I want to do is graph that historical date against a particular column, which is in that instance the active column. That data, one after the other, 173, 166, 224. What I want to do is graph that data over in terms of a scorecard on the historical data side. So I'm going to go down a little bit here. And surprise, surprise, there is a new graph here, which is the embedded strings over a historical over a certain number of days. In that instance, I've chosen arbitrarily 30 days. Over the last 30 days, what has my embedded string look like? And you notice that there is flat here. There is not much activity going on in terms of development for that. For general patterns, you notice that there have been some spikes that have been corrected. There's a new spike that needs to be corrected again. So there have been new stuff pushed into the development world that have not been addressed from an i18n perspective, and you see it right away. So it's a very useful tool to get to that history here. What has happened? In terms of the history themselves, whenever you have a scan that is being run, you want to update those, and this is done by a macro in the Excel scorecard here. I'm not going to talk about some Excel reporting that is being done. In other words, what you can do is do things based on XML. You can also do things, those are all XML here. And then you can do things more in terms of an Excel kind of look, like what we've done before. If you remember, when I generated the Excel file, it had those specific results, the C++, the number of embedded strings, the locale sensitive methods, and so on. Well, in a similar fashion, I can generate this one from the command line at will from a regular pattern, for example, every night. And those numbers, I'm going to feed those numbers into now the report card to have what is my status today. And today, I have this big spike. It's right here. This guy here relates directly to what I have in my report, to those items here. In other words, you're going to create a scorecard that comes from different types of reports. And here I'm showing XML or Excel. You can have the other type of reporting, like a specific HTML that you want to plug in directly in here or something. You have things that come directly from Globalizer, from a hard view at the code, and you have things that come in from the analyst, and that will be very specific to how the project is led, the requirements that you have for your project. Do you need to have BiDi? And if you need to have BiDi, maybe what you want to do is add something here. It will be adding a new tab that looks like this pretty much. If you need to have more requirements, you can include more requirements here by doing an insert, and you will be able to configure this particular card to your specifics. There are more things, and I'm not going to talk about everything here, but you could collate the results for this particular project with other projects and make yet another view, which would be overall, what are my end project view of the world here. What I want to do is go back to this presentation here and take you a little bit step by step in terms of what needs to be done for your organization. So in the PowerPoint here, we go back over what we just explained, and then for starting with your specific historical graphs, you could reuse ours, and for very similar purposes. You're going to generate XML files, and how to generate XML files, that's shown right here. I'm going to click here on that link, and I'm going to go to ways that I can generate different things here. So there are a number of scan commands and options. It's like this Java file, for example, had to scan it, had to scan for specific history of my project that I've configured as a developer, and then run it in the QA environment. So you have a number of options that you can configure your reports based on the type of data that you want to look at. Is it this one?
Yeah.
I think I have two of them. There we go.
Okay.
Same with the Excel. Excel, they have pretty much the same type of reporting capability. What you want to do is then, you may want to massage the data because the data is raw coming in. And then you want to link them into the Excel tab to create your own graphs there. There are a number of utilities that are put together to help start the macro to generate the HTML, how to publish things. So there are a number of things that are included here. And if I go back to the directory structure, you're going to see here it's all in bin. There are those guys right here. All right, that's I think pretty much it in terms of what we wanted to show for the demo.
Just some notes. The Globalizer scorecard will be added to Globalizer in version 3.6. It's actually getting pretty close to release, but we're not going to release over the July 4th sort of time frame. So you probably see announcements for that coming out in mid-July. If you need it sooner, let us know. We also packaged the Globalizer scorecard with some configuration services. Everything you need to get the scorecard running is there in Globalizer. But just for a lot of people, we think it's going to be easier to have us set it up because there's rule set configuration that needs to be done, and just a bunch of other services that might make sense to have us perform. That could be anywhere from 3 days of configuration effort, and fine-tuning filters, to 2 weeks if it's a particularly large and difficult code base. But that can even be done remotely from here. It's meant not to be a huge project. If you have a need, just email sales@lingoport.com. Now, we're coming to the Q&A point, and I want to remind everybody, hopefully I remember to say this, please type in questions that you might have into the question interface, and we're going to get right into that. Could you click on the presentation? There you go. All right, so in conclusion, as we go, internationalization is ongoing. We support it with Globalizer. The scorecard answers, is it internationalized? The software engineers can actually understand and see the implications implications of internationalization. QA can integrate this reporting capability into their process. And management and localization now has a tool to actually see how's progress going and how are they going to be affected. So here's the point at which we'll have the questions. And let's see. Chris, could you have a look and see what's coming in?
Why don't we had from the last webinar a good question. You asked Leandro and Mike how they handle internationalization, or how is that? Remember that? We started with Leandro and Mike in the morning.
Chris, not clear.
I'm sorry. I should have written it down. Let me see. All right, quick question here. What programming languages does Globalizer support?
Okay, a whole lot of them. The core languages are Java and anything .NET. But there's also all kinds of HTML and HTML variants. So like a JSP would be a Java and a HTML scan combined in batch, or ASPX might be HTML and C#. There are SQL scripts. There's all kinds of other families of scripting languages, including JavaScript. We are adding specific support in 3.6 for ActionScript to help further support Flex and Flash and related ActionScript languages. Also adding additional XML support. So these are things that you can support now, but we're adding another level of detail on those capabilities, and a whole lot in between. It's kind of worth it to have a view on the Globalizer help system. And if you have if nothing I've said is what you need, just email us. Chances are that we actually have support for it that we've done for the service project, and it's just a customization of the rule set.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Question for Ike and Leandro. How can you use these reports to help with executive planning, development planning, or escalation of issues?
Great question.
So one of the things that I look at in terms of using a scorecard or dashboard, like the first bit is the static analysis to get a general idea of what the issues are when you first start a project. That helps with the overall scoping and the plan allocation of resources. The next part is, as we move forward, is being able to have metrics that we can follow, because if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. So I can't see what they're doing in the globalization.
So at Adobe, we developed 2 additional tools to complement the globalization report card, which is the assessment tool itself. We also have a dashboard that is very colorful. It has a list of all the products that have been assessed and several columns, each indicating a category in from our report card. And for each of these categories, for each product, we have a color icon, and there are 3 possible values: red, yellow, and green. So green, of course, means everything is fine. There's nothing wrong with that category. Everything is working as is. Red is supposed to be impaired, not working, and yellow is something in between. So this is something that is very easy to understand, and this is what executives and decision makers like to see. Very often they don't understand the details of internationalization, but they do understand dashboards, they do understand colors. So if they see a lot of reds for their product, they will want to know what can they do to turn those reds into greens. So once we catch their attention with the colors, then we bring them to our third tool, which is called the Globalization Action Plan, which basically translates all those red items from the globalization report card in the dashboard into a list of things to do. Then we go to them and we say, look at the globalization action plan for your product. This is a list of everything that's red. This is what you need to work on in order to bring your product to being all green. Because of course, they're all comparing themselves, their products to other products. There's a little bit of a competition thing going on. So we basically keep it simple for them. We just hand it to them, the information they need to know, they need to have in order to make their decision, which is to go ahead and improve the internationalization of their product.
All right, thanks, Leandro.
Great. All right.
We have a question just came in. How can you distinguish between programmatic elements and internationalization issues? And that's what the configuration is about in Globalizer. So there's a lot of there's actually a number of ways to do that in Globalizer, where you would configure that either on the server with filters, and you can see Olivier is quickly going into a rule set where you see, in this case, embedded string scan rules. You can filter on a number of specific issues ranging from string methods, string literals. So you might say that every string in association with a particular method, this is Java, is likely to be a programmatic element that might be like a debug issue or an SQL query or something like that. So Globalizer has this whole mechanism that when we talk about configuration, by default you get a whole bunch of configuration tools in a default rule set within Globalizer, but then you can add to that and customize and the like. So that's where you fine-tune Globalizer. So like for instance, Olivier highlighted the where function there, and you see a regular expression that says basically any string in association with this where function, which is going to be an SQL query, is something you don't want to localize, so we're going to ignore it. And that's how you make your data clean. There's also some filtering you can do on the client side. There are all kinds of tools within the Globalizer client to, you see a little 1 there, that's the priority. You can change the status. Let's say you don't want to do that to something like ignore. So you can ignore that issue, and that Globalizer has a database that now tracks that issue and says ignore that on a case-by-case basis. We're looking at locale-sensitive methods. So in this case, the to lowercase command method in Java that obviously has case-sensitive issues, but it may be in a part of your code where you just don't care. So you can either filter based on the exact issue. You can take a file or directory out of the scan, for instance. There's also another way where you can add an ignore comment. That's an NLS comment that's fairly non-invasive into the source code. You see the NLS command there. Also, what's very useful about inserting an NLS command is you can search on that on any IDE, for instance, and go back and review that. But those are a number of different ways that we configure and go through so that you have a clean result. All right, another question? All right, looks like we are just about finishing up. If questions arise, you are welcome to email us. Let's go back to the final PowerPoint screen. Leandro and Mike, actually, since they were on globalization teams, at both their organizations. Mike, in the case of Mike that I know of, is Yahoo and now Zynga, and Leandro at Adobe. Maybe you have something to add there? I'll pick on you, Mike. You want to go first?
Well, I have to, many points that you put across, but the main thing that I see is by putting in the tools, again, helps the teams tremendously. The first thing that I end up usually using a static analysis tools for is when I first go into a project or a company gets acquired, is to help me with the scoping to get an idea of just how much work is going to be done, which helps tremendously, and then justifying the allocation of resources, how much time it's going to take, et cetera. And then after that, using the tools for, again, measuring the progress moving forwards for getting the code into an internationalized state. I can go on and on for that, but I want to give Leandro a moment.
Thank you. I think that tools in general, they are very useful. They can save you a lot of time, and they can provide some structure to the work, the internationalization work you're doing. But I believe that you will always need humans to interpret the data that comes out of that tool, to deal with these special situations. So I think they, both tools and humans, they complement each other. I don't think you can replace a team or a group of people working with internationalization with any tool, with any solution. You can certainly streamline how you do things, but you will always need those experts. You will need those pair of eyes to assess what's going on, to understand the problem and help come to a solution.
All right. I have one short question here. Is the software available to use in-house, or do we use Lingoport to use it? I want to be clear. We sell software that other people use it. We use our software to deliver services, but a long time ago we made the decision to make Globalizer itself not an in-house tool, but something that our clients could use, so that when we were long gone after we performed internationalization, they could still be self-supportive. And that software has grown quite a bit over the years to what it is now. It is more common that people use it independently of us than anything else. So that's clear. I think we are out of official time. Let's see, do we have one more question that's unique here? I'm going to wrap it up. And what I'm going to invite you to do is to see the question and answer screen, to send an email if you have an outstanding question. And I'll look through these after and see if I can get back to you individually for those who I have not answered in public here. There's some questions about thresholding and the like. Just know that there's a lot configurable with the Globalizer. I mean, that's the answer. That all of this, we didn't do anything proprietary or smoke and mirrors or black label here, and it's quite configurable for you based on your results and what makes sense for you and your instance of your software. Thank you, everyone. Thank you especially for getting up nice and early, Mike and Leandro. Thanks, Chris, for setting all this up, and Olivier for responding while he's very busy on other projects to jump in and show the scorecard. And thank you, everyone in the audience, for spending your morning or afternoon or evening, depending upon where you are in the world. We'll be doing this again in a few hours at noon Mountain Time. Perhaps some of you will attend both. But anyway, have a great day, everyone, and we hope to hear from you soon. Go ahead, try Globalizer at globalizer.com. Or check out lingoport.com. We have a brand new website that Chris launched this week. He's very happy with. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.